I've been thinking a lot about longer training cycles, and I'm sure this is something that you don't think at all about. A longer training cycle isn't necessarily the length of your training plan, but it is the length of how you structure your training. So in other words, look, most of us usually use a 7-day training cycle because, after all, we live our lives on a 7-day Monday through Sunday schedule. You know, most of us work Monday through Friday, we have the weekends, and you know, that's the way our life is scheduled. We have certain things on certain days, and that's a regular, consistent schedule. But a lot of athletes, well, I shouldn't say a lot, some athletes use longer training cycles. So instead of planning their training over 7 days, they're planning their training over, say, 10 days, or maybe even longer, maybe a 12-day cycle or a 14-day cycle. I know that British marathoner Paula Radcliffe used to use an 8-day training cycle where she would train for 7 days, take a day off, and then start another 7-day training cycle. So it varied by a day every single time that cycle restarted itself. Now, there are certainly pros and cons to using a longer training cycle. Some of the benefits is enhanced recovery. You're basically taking the normal 7-day schedule and lengthening it by a couple days. And the great thing about this is that you're doing the same amount of work, but you're just spreading it out over a longer time period, so that in effect, you basically have more recovery days in between your faster workouts and your long runs. So it can be a really helpful strategy for, say, older runners who might need more recovery, or anybody else who just has a much more flexible schedule and can do a training schedule like this. Now, these training cycles also really help, I think, with the mental side of running, because if you get anxious about fitting in all of the different things that you have to during the week, your strength training, you have to worry about fitting in one workout, maybe two, or say your long run, that's a lot of different type of work over the course of 7 days. And a 10-day cycle gives you more flexibility to spread it out, to have more recovery, and just to put less stress on yourself to accomplish all that extra work in just 7 days. So if you're someone who really gets anxious or stressed out about, man, I gotta do my 2 workouts and my 2 strength training sessions, and I have drills, and I need to do the long run, and there's this cross-training sessions that I know are really important, a 10-day cycle or longer can give you that extra flexibility to get it all in. Now, obviously, longer training cycles have drawbacks too. Yes, they can be flexible. Yes, they can help you with extra recovery if you might need that. But the major drawback of longer training cycles is the fact that they're unpredictable. If you're starting, let's just say, a marathon training cycle, you know that your long runs are gonna be on the weekends, probably Saturday or Sunday, and that's gonna be a consistent feature of your training over the course of the entire plan. But if you're using a 10-day cycle, the day of your long run is going to change from week to week to week. And in fact, some weeks you may not even have a long run. So it is a type of schedule that is only going to work for you if you are flexible enough to make it happen. If you're someone who has a standard 9-to-5 job and you have a family and normal weekly obligations like most people, it's going to be very difficult, because it is going to prevent you from planning your workouts and your long runs on a more consistent basis into the future. And you just have to be very adaptable. You might have long runs on a Monday or a Tuesday. You might have workouts on a Sunday or a Friday, or days that a lot of runners typically don't do longer, more challenging sessions. So if you're someone who really craves routine, if you're someone who simply doesn't have the flexibility in their schedule to be able to do a long run any day of the week or a workout on any day of the week, you're probably going to really struggle with some of these off training schedules, these cycles that are on a different schedule than your typical 7-day schedule. Because there's a reason why we use a 7-day training schedule. It's because our lives are structured around a 7-day training schedule. And you know, I just wrote an article about 10-day training cycles for Runner's World, and you can check it out on their site. I actually think it's going to be in the July or August issue of the magazine. And a big takeaway from talking to other runners and from talking to several coaches is that the disruption of your schedule is so disruptive that this really only works for elite runners who can have ultimate flexibility with their schedules, or with people who have very flexible work schedules, or who maybe be retired or not working right now and have the ability to go do any kind of workout on any kind of day. Now, the other big drawback of a 10-day cycle or longer is the fact that over time, you might actually be doing less work overall than someone who's doing a 7-day training cycle. Because after all, if you think about it, someone over 28 days in a 7-day schedule is going to run 4 long runs. But if you're running 1 long run every 10 days, you're gonna go 30 days and only do 3 long runs. So in a certain way, you're doing less overall work. Now, the counter argument to that is that, well, that work is gonna be of a higher quality. You're gonna be able to run your workouts better. You're gonna be able to recover better and more fully adapt to all that hard work that you're doing. So there's certainly a trade-off. And I would really think about whether or not you need that extra recovery, or if you simply need to schedule your 7 days of training a little bit better. And if that's the case, then we can probably abandon the 10, 12, 14-day training cycles and instead just be a little bit more intelligent about our 7-day training schedule. Because like we've talked about, it's not for everyone. It can be very disruptive to your schedule. And unless you're someone who can really make it work, then it's going to be something that is kind of annoying on a weekly basis for you. So I want to leave you with a couple resources so that you can learn a little bit more about longer training cycles. Number one, go to Runner's World. You can search Jason Fitzgerald 10-day training cycle, and you're going to come up with the article that I wrote that featured the advice from Coach Mario Fraioli and also some advice from podcaster Lindsey Hein. And this is a great article talking about the pros and cons of that longer 10-day training cycle. The other thing is, I talked to Mario Fraioli on the podcast all about these longer training cycles, and we went into much more detail about the philosophy behind longer training cycles and all the nuance that you have to think about. And what I loved about that conversation is the fact that ultimately this comes down to knowing your body, to listening to your body and really understanding the signals that it's telling you and what it's trying to communicate to you. So if you're someone who really understands their body and can know when to push, when to hold back a little bit and really give yourself that extra recovery time, then you might be someone who can use a more flexible schedule to give yourself that flexibility to run a workout or maybe give yourself an extra day for recovery. So definitely check out the Strength Running Podcast, one of our latest episodes with Mario Fraioli, the article on Runner's World. And of course, if you have any questions, you can always email me at support@strengthrunning.com. Hope you guys are well.